What's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of Sourcefind Asia, co-host of the Main Channel podcast, and the host of the Sourcefind Asia YouTube channel. Of course, back with another one. It's going to be a quick video. I'll probably do another one of these in a couple weeks. But I've been in Indonesia for 7 days, 8 days total. 5 days in Jakarta and a couple of days in Bali. So just wanted to give my initial thoughts on Indonesia as a whole. Sitting here in Pomelo coffee shop, Sophia Spa. It's right next to my Airbnb in Canggu. I mean, I think a lot of the places here, like the outdoor cafes and stuff like that, are similar to this. But I'm going to start off with my initial impressions of Jakarta. So, I think if you've been to more than one Southeast Asian country, there's a lot of similarities in terms of, obviously the weather, like sort of the overall feeling of the city. Even the design, a lot of the architecture as well is a little bit similar. So, and then of course even the applications that people use, right? So like if you're talking about the ride-sharing apps, Grab is the Uber of Southeast Asia. So like if you're in Thailand, it's Grab. If you're in the Philippines, it's Grab. If you're here, it's Grab. Obviously each country has variances, and like for example in Indonesia there's Gojek, which is sort of a main competitor to Grab, might even be more popular than Grab from what I've seen. So there's all these like subtle differences. I think Jakarta as a whole, unfortunately I got sick after my first couple of days. I'm still kind of sick right now, so bear with me if I'm not as like vocal or as perky as I usually have in my videos, if you could describe me as perky. I think that like Jakarta as a whole is a giant city. It's huge. I'm not sure if it's as big or bigger than Manila. I haven't compared them side by side on a map, but just the feeling of being in the city, I felt like it was bigger. But I think a big difference is like in Manila is almost like, and I've talked about this in my other videos, Manila is like 5 or 6 different cities in one. Whereas I felt like Jakarta was just a whole giant city, sort of like how Guangzhou is. Guangzhou is like, you don't feel like you're in a different part, and then this is a different city, and then a different part, this is a different city. Like, whereas Manila, it's like, it really does feel like you're kind of traveling to different cities, even though it's technically all under the same city. I felt like it's an older city, like in comparison to, when I say that, I mean all of Asia, a lot of giant cities are old, they have a long history and everything like that. But what I mean is that if you look at a lot of the Chinese cities, like Guangzhou is one of the oldest cities in the world, but they've sort of rebuilt it and they've expanded it and they've made it more modern. So like in the area that I live in Guangzhou is very modern and clean. It's all come up in the last 5, 10, 15 years. Same thing I felt like in BGC in Manila. That's an area that's also come up in the last 5, 10 years. So it all feels very new. Whereas Jakarta, I felt the oldness of it. And it's not a bad thing, it's just an observation. In terms of language, obviously the educated people speak English, but it's definitely less prevalent in Jakarta than it was in places like the Philippines. Like me, if I've spent 5 years in China, like going anywhere else in Southeast Asia is like easier than China, you know what I mean? So just get a translator if you want. There's going to be some communication difficulties. That's one of the first things I noticed is like if you ordered food delivery, the delivery people tend not to speak English, and therefore there's going to be a little bit of like complications in terms of clarifying like your address or what you ordered. The apps themselves, Grab Food, Gojek, has an in-app translator, but Sometimes the drivers don't realize that they're talking to a foreigner, so I think they try to call you, and then that causes issues, but that's easy stuff to get around. Less traffic than I expected. Like a lot of people were saying that Jakarta is going to be a traffic-heavy place. I could see that, but I think again, Manila probably has the worst traffic out of any country that I've been to in my life. So I think anything else besides Manila is easy peasy. So Jakarta wasn't really an issue for me in terms of getting around the city. But I was staying in like sort of the central area. I'll have a clip of the place and stuff like that, and probably link up the name somewhere around here. That place seemed to be within 20-30 minutes of everywhere because I was central. So one night I went for dinner with my Airbnb host. Shout out to Edward. Definitely amazing apartments that they have, and I highly recommend anybody staying there. We'll have a little walkthrough of the apartment, but we went sort of north, close to the port, sort of the suburbs area, and it was like a 20-minute drive, even though it was quite a big distance, and that's just because the highways are pretty efficient. There's not much traffic on the highways, especially at night. So that was cool. Part of my thing was like, while I'm in Jakarta, let me see what the business is like. Let me see if there's potential for sourcing. So I actually went to this market called Tanah Abang, I think, and went around the clothing market. Have a whole series there, like shots and stuff like that. Didn't really see what I was looking for because I know that I've talked about this quite a bit. I feel like if you're going to source outside of China, you're talking about textiles, so you're talking about like bags and clothing and accessories that involve textiles. So I wanted to go to the textiles market, and that was supposedly the main textiles market from all the research that I did. It was interesting because it was kind of like going to a textiles market in China, except nobody was Chinese. The thing that I noticed there was everything was OEM. There was no custom products. So I asked, because that's the biggest thing, is if you go to these markets, it's like, okay, cool, you guys have all this stuff that you can sell me at wholesale, that's fantastic. But can you customize something? If I give you a design, can you take my design and bring it to fruition on a mass production scale? And everybody said no. That being said, I then start to talk to a couple different people, and mainly my Airbnb host, whose wife actually works with some factories, some manufacturers and stuff. And she kind of broke it down to me, and he broke it down and she broke it down to me, which was basically that in Indonesia, even if you live here and you're from here, it's difficult to connect with some of the major factories because the major factories are sort of located in remote areas, and it's all word of mouth, right? Like it's the same thing that I've been saying, is it's not like they're on Alibaba, right? They're not on some platform where you can search for factories in Indonesia and find them. So you kind of have to know people, and it takes a long time, even if you're local. So it's not the easiest place to look for those kind of manufacturers. Hopefully, on the flip side of this trip, so I've still got another 2 to 3 weeks, and I plan on spending about another week in Jakarta after I leave Bali. I will be trying to go to one of these areas that my Airbnb host, Edward, mentioned, and I think he's going to take me to some city or some town where there are a lot of factories there and try to make some introductions. So we'll see how that goes. But just my overall impressions is that it's not easy to source product from here unless you're trying to buy OEM stuff. But then at the same time, the OEM products are products that are made in China anyways. So, I got prices on some of those products, and I was like, man, for the quality that I was looking at and the things, I was like, I could get this in China for 40% lower in cost. So it just seemed unnecessary. From a business standpoint, those are my initial impressions. And from a social standpoint, I think people worry about Jakarta because Indonesia is an Islamic country, largest Muslim population in the world. 80% of the people in Indonesia are Muslim. It's like they think that it's going to be super conservative, and I didn't really get that feeling, man. Not really. You see people wearing traditional Islamic clothing, the women wearing hijabs and stuff like that, but that's the full extent of it. Obviously, you hear the calls for prayer, but there's nightclubs, there are people dating, there are, I think public displays of affection is probably not really a thing, but I don't think they really care if you're like a foreigner. Maybe one of the biggest signs of the fact that it's an Islamic country is just the lack of ease of buying alcohol. So if you want to buy alcohol, you can't just go to a convenience store and or like a regular grocery store and buy, you know, a bottle of whatever or some beers. You can go to like most bars, most nightclubs, whatever have that. That's not an issue. But like in terms of purchasing it for yourself, you most likely have to order it online. And then the online process also takes, it's kind of up in there. They say 2 to 4 hours to deliver, or you have to go to specific liquor stores. To me, I think that was like and that's not really a major inconvenience. It's just means that you have to plan a little bit in advance. That being said, let me talk about Bali. Bali, I've only been here for a couple of days. And again, like I said, I was sick. So yesterday was really like the first day that I was able to get out of my, well, I mean, yesterday was my first full day here anyways, but yesterday I didn't really spend that much time going around. Today has really been the first day where it's like I woke up and decided to hit up the coffee shop and all that stuff. And my initial impressions, it's a giant Chiang Mai. That's how I feel. Like lots of cool spots like the one that I'm at right now, lots of small little roads and rice fields, and you know, there's obviously the beach. It's a giant Chiang Mai with a beach. That's the feeling that I've gotten so far. You know, not that many tall buildings, obviously, which is natural. Lots of cool little villas. Staying in Canggu, there's all these, you know, small villas, small resorts. The beach itself was nice, very expansive, lots of stuff going on. In comparison to like Boracay, it was definitely dirtier. But that's, you know, Boracay is like probably one of the best beaches in the world, probably like a 5-star beach. So in comparison to that, it was a little bit dirtier, and you know, the water wasn't as blue. You know, that it is what it is. Yeah, people have been nice. Like the locals seem to be super friendly. Weather is amazing. Not super humid, but pretty hot. Like I've been sweating most of the day walking around and stuff. Big thing is lots of healthy options for food, which I love. That's kind of why it reminds me of Chiang Mai a lot. And when I say healthy, it's not just that it's healthy, but it's healthy and affordable. Like I had a giant salad bowl yesterday. It was a salad bowl. It had like all the greens you can imagine and tomatoes and stuff like that, and then some protein and a little bit of falafel. And well, I forget the name of the cheese, but it's like one of the healthier cheeses. And it was like, I think the thing cost me like $5 or $5. I couldn't finish it. Like that's how much food it was. So that's been cool. And even here, I'm just hanging out. Like I have this like coconut thing. The coconut this is a whole coconut that they freshly cut for me, and it's like, I believe it's like 35,000 Indonesian rupiahs, which is probably like 100,000 is about $7, so 35,000 is probably like what, like that's half. So $3-4 for like a whole coconut, you know, which is awesome. You know, you want to get green juice and stuff like that, it's $1 or $2. So like, you know, if you really want to ball, I don't see myself spending more than $10-15 a meal, and that's going to be really excessive. Like that's really going to some of the more expensive spots, like the higher end spots. Yeah, so I mean, so far so good. That's pretty much it in terms of my first impressions, because I've literally only been here for about 2 days. And like I said, yesterday I didn't really go outside that much besides going to the beach. Today is the first day that I've been out, so I'll probably have a little bit more thoughts about this place. Oh, one thing I was going to say, demographics. Lots of Western people, and like I was really surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised, but I don't know what I was expecting, but significantly more Western people than I thought. You know, I thought that, you know, it's like I'm in Bali. The cool thing about the Philippines is that even when you go to like Boracay, there's definitely foreigners, but it's like 20-30%, you know, foreigners, and then the rest are locals going on vacation to Boracay. Whereas here it seems to be the opposite, where it's like 80% foreigners and then 20% locals that are coming here on vacation. And I think a big part of it is because a lot of people come to Bali for the whole digital nomad scene. Like that's one thing I've noticed. There's forums and expat forums and stuff like that. A lot of people come here to, you know, live the digital nomad lifestyle and all that. So it's not just people coming through on vacation, but it's also people that live here. Well, it's probably one big part of it. But yeah, those are my initial impressions. I will probably make another one of these videos in about 2 weeks. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this kind of content. And if you like this kind of content, like, comment, share, subscribe. And I will see you guys next week.